oh, I don't want to give away all the information for free. When you're selling services and when you have a B2B offer, you might not have that issue, right? And so that's why I say it's easier, because you can just give away all of the information and just sell the implementation.
How did you build your catalog, and what are some things that you think are essential pieces of every funnel?
The newsletter landing page, I would say for the thank you page, I think this is an easy one, but it's also interesting because not a lot of people do it. I would say like find a way to, in the welcome email, I would say if you can, give them a quick win. Ironically, people overthink a lot what they want to say or what they should be posting or creating content about. And like, honestly, like I've learned this lesson over and over again, like you don't know what people want to hear from you most of the time. So you just need to experiment more and like not overthink it that much and like let the market tell you what they want.
The way to overcome imposter syndrome is to like just say real things. What's a prompt that's always genuine is what is advice you wish your former self knew. Yeah. Like you can't be disingenuous. Like, yes, I really genuinely wish that 1 year ago I knew this.
So when I decided to start my newsletter, I very intentionally chose a series of constraints that would allow me to, as you were saying, show up every week, week after week, and to consistently put out that deliverable. And so my constraints were, I don't have to think over and over again about what I'm going to say. I just have to sit at my computer, find a funnel to audit it, and then I just fill in my template with the information or the things that I'm noticing, and that's it. And I have a very repeatable format that I can stick to.
Daniel, what's going on, man? Pumped to be here chatting today.
I know, dude, me too. I've been looking forward to it all week.
Hell yeah. Likewise. Yeah, it's a Friday, so it's recording podcasts on Friday, always a good time.
I think it's my first time recording on Friday, so I'll try to make it a habit.
Yeah. I mean, every day. I like podcasting. I've been doing it for 4.5 years, so I don't really care what day it is, but it's always a good time. But dude, I've been really enjoying a lot of the content you've been putting out on LinkedIn, on Twitter, and then when you actually, take the action and get on your lists, the breakdowns you're sending. So just excited to dive into everything and get really tactical and also talk about some of the principles as well.
I love that. Yeah. Before recording, we were talking about like the importance of mastering the fundamentals and sticking to the basics. And that's a theme, as I was telling you, that's very top of mind for me. So I'm excited. I also warn you, I'm a funnels nerd. So yep. I'm ready to get tactical and dig in.
Yeah, you told me, don't be afraid to interrupt me if I just keep going.
Yeah.
So, I mean, sometimes my job's real easy. I come in with one question prepared and then I just chill and listen. But other times, it's there's a job here to do to facilitate, I suppose. Tell me, I like how on your profile, you kind of have this term for yourself, just a full stack internet builder.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Great question. So I actually recently changed it because I'm working with someone who's like a LinkedIn expert. And he told me, dude, you're being way too clever. You need to be a little bit more clear. Mm-hmm. But that really is kind of how I describe myself whenever someone asks me what I do for a living. The joke is when it's someone who's not like from our internet world, mm-hmm. I usually say I'm an accountant, just so I don't have to explain the whole thing. Yeah, but if they do have some background, that's usually what I say. And what I mean by that is, over the past 4 years, I've acquired a bunch of different skills, mm-hmm. like for building and operating digital businesses. And that's kind of what I mean, right? So I'm able to do copy. I'm able to build automations with no code. I'm able to spin up funnels, and so when you combine all of those, in my mind, that's kind of how you call someone who is able to do all of those different things at once.
Yeah, I like it. And then your story as well, kind of becoming this multi-talented marketer. How long when did you get into marketing? How did you study it formally? Just kind of find it interesting and stumble into it? I always appreciate people's how they got into it. It tells a lot of the story too.
Great question. So it's funny because I actually wrote about this a few days ago after meeting with someone from one of the programs that I work at. And I met with this person and she was like, dude, I've been reading your content on LinkedIn and I had no idea you were able to write. I thought you were only doing, because at this program, I'm like the automation coach, yep. Like the funnel automation coach. And so this person was like, I had no idea you knew how to write. That's awesome. And so that inspired me to write this post, kind of breaking down my story. But essentially the nutshell is 4 years ago, I was on Twitter. I had just moved to the U.S. from Peru. I'm originally from Venezuela, but I was living in Peru at the time. Moved to the U.S., kind of had to reinvent myself because I dropped out of college way back years ago, and I didn't have a college degree and really no connections here in the U.S. And so I did know that I had always enjoyed writing, you know, and so I was actually reading Tools of Titans by Tim Ferriss, and reading the book made me realize that whenever he features someone, he would only link to their Twitter profiles, like not their website, not their Instagram, not their YouTube. He would only share their Twitter profile, and I thought that was interesting, and so I took that as a signal to give Twitter another chance. I'm sure maybe it's been your experience if you heard other people say this, but like if you follow the wrong people on Twitter, like your feed can be chaos, and like it can be a terrible experience of like just endless politics and like BS. But that was kind of my signal to give Twitter another try. I just unfollowed everyone and just followed people who was featured on the book, and that was obviously like a very nice curation
a lot of entrepreneurs,
people.
yeah, exactly, successful business people.
Right, and so started doing that. Started like tweeting here and there. One day I see a tweet from this guy called Dickie Bush. He was saying something along the lines of, "I'm thinking about doing a 30-day writing challenge. Who would like to join me?" And I was like, well, I mean, I like writing. I'm trying to give this Twitter thing a try. Let's just do it. I commented. A week later, I'm like in a Slack channel with a bunch of other writers that I had never seen in my life. So complete bunch of strangers. However, I loved the program, even though it wasn't really a program back then. It was like an accountability group, mostly.
Very casual.
Very super casual. It was even free. Like I paid $50, but Dickie's condition, the creator's condition was, if you complete the program, I'll give you your money back. Because, yeah. Anyway, I liked it. I did it again. By the end of that second cohort, though, I saw a big opportunity because, for context, in the very first cohort, there were 50 people, around 50 people. In the second, and I think you were one of those early people.
Yeah, actually. It was January of 2021.
Okay, I think that was probably the second one or third one.
Yeah.
But in that second one that I did,
I paid.
You did pay, okay. You
I didn't pay. I paid like $100, $200 maybe.
Yeah,
so.
it was cheap.
Yeah.
So in that second one, so first one was 50 people. In the second one, there were 100. And that's a 2x. That's if you think about it, that's
good numbers.
Yeah, that's a good number, especially for a brand new thing. But not only that, I had also started to notice how in our Twitter bubble, people were like really talking about it. Like the word was spreading. And I was like, this is very interesting. Like, you know, I like the program. This is like right up my alley. I like writing. I enjoy what this guy is building here. Like, and the thing is growing, right? So that was kind of the opportunity gap that I saw, and I'm sure he's gonna need help.
Yep.
I'm not sure how I'm gonna.
Well, he had a full-time job at the time too, right?
Kind of like I had just moved to America.
I'm saying Dickie.
Oh, Dickie, yeah.
You're like the person running this. It's just a side project for
Correct.
him. Yeah.
Yeah. He actually a very demanding job. Like he's working at Wall Street, like big hedge fund. Anyway, long story short, I cold DM him, being like, "Hey, dude, just did the program for the second time. I really loved it. I'm sure you're gonna need help here soon. I don't know, or I'm not exactly sure how I'm gonna be able to help you, but if you ever need help, here I am." We took it from there. It kind of evolved over time, obviously. But just to give you some context, at the very beginning, my job or my responsibility was very small things like attending a live session that he was hosting with someone else and like taking notes and then sharing my notes with everyone else on the program. You know, small things like that. So after a few experiments and after a few weeks of kind of giving it a try, we liked it. And then, I mean, the rest is history, right? Like my whole role has been evolving since then. And that's kind of what I was referring to in the beginning when you asked me about the full stack internet builder idea. Like basically I've been over the past 4 years acquiring all of these different skills. And the coolest part, I've been getting paid in the process, right? So I've been basically getting this world-class education on internet marketing and digital building, and building this reputation while also getting paid. And yeah, that's what led us here potentially.
Absolutely. Yeah, I interviewed Dickie in January or February of 2021. He had like 5,000 or 6,000 Twitter followers at the time, so very early days. And it's just been an awesome journey to watch and then, learn from as well. Like, I don't just follow them because, like, I've met Dickie in person a handful of times and he's a cool guy, but like we're by no means like close friends. Like I follow him because I'm learning from what this community is producing, and like you've kind of been a consistent person that you see involved with it as well from day one. So it's very cool to see. And then obviously a theme underpinning all of this is how, one, the product that you're selling is to people. This is why you should be creating content online. These are the benefits of doing it. And then likewise, the most interesting part is that almost all of their marketing the whole time has been, people like yourself, people like Dickie, and other people in the program using content to sell the program. So, I mean, the credibility loop there is very strong.
Yeah, I agree. And that was also part of the flywheel, right? Like of how a few moments ago I was saying how the word was spreading. Like there was like a baked in viral loop in the program that I don't think he intentionally kind of, it wasn't like a master plan that he had. It was very like organic, but that was definitely a big part.
Yeah. So at what point did you decide to launch, your separate project? Obviously you're still involved in a lot of ways with their kind of formal programs, but your specific funnel breakdowns, when did that come about?
Yeah. So been working with them for years. I'm still working with them. I'm their COO. I'm very much involved in like, I'm a key part of the business and the operations, but I also at the same time have like this entrepreneurial edge of doing other things and like having projects and working on projects. And so about 18 months ago, I decided to like do something on the side. After a few months of kind of fumbling and, like trial and error, I ended up building or starting an agency almost by accident with my wife. It's an email marketing agency. We did that for up until very recently. I'm actually still working with a handful of clients, but a few months ago, and to answer your question, the Funnel Breakdowns newsletter, which has been my kind of my main content engine, if you will, since then, started as a way to potentially attract clients and like generate business for ourselves. Now, a few months ago, I realized that, especially since my time is so limited, because I'm still working full time with Dickie and Cole, and the business isn't shrinking, it's growing. I want to start doing things with higher leverage, a little bit higher leverage. And so that's when I decided to kind of go back to my roots, start writing online again, because that's actually how the whole story started. And that's when I started posting on LinkedIn. So I've been posting on LinkedIn for the past 2 months, every single day. And I've been getting some traction. And now finally the newsletter has a better flywheel, because back in the day I was just writing these newsletters, and I had a small list that I had been building over time and had like a few spikes, but it was, in terms of growth, it was pretty slow and not even steady. Yeah. But that's how it started.
And then in terms of funnel breakdowns, like what are you analyzing in terms of, because like every business has a funnel. Are you, indiscriminate, just how any business attracts customers? What's kind of the focus, and like what are, this is something as well that a lot of the curriculum from Dickie and Cole talks about is, every creator, if you will, has, and I don't remember the exact word, but something like pillars. There's like 4 fundamental pillars to, there's a point they're trying to make, right? If I ask like, what's the fundamental point, like this person online, what are they trying to communicate? Andy Frisella, right? Someone like him, what are his main points? I think it's like, it's important to be disciplined and like you have to do difficult things, whatever. And so with yourself, what are the pillars that you're trying to educate? Because really it's like you have a couple main points, then you're just kind of using the same examples, right? Or using a different example to illustrate the same main points week over week. It's like, you can't skip this, you can't skip this, you can't skip this. Here's another example of this person doing all those things.
So that's a great question. Actually, there's a lot of like small nuances that I take for granted, but I would say in general, I always audit and feature creators who have, well, obviously a like digital business, like some sort of like digital product or online training or coaching program, but it's all digital. Most of them are doing mostly organic, like they're generating traffic and generating sales and business through organic content. So that's kind of a big similarity between most of them. And then when it comes to the actual breakdown, I usually look at their landing page, like their newsletter or lead magnet landing page, because that's typically the entry point to someone's email list, Then I also analyze their thank you page if they have one. I have strong opinions about thank you pages, so if we want to get it super into the weeds, we can get into the weeds later. But so it's newsletter or lead magnet landing page, then thank you page, then welcome email, and then sometimes I would do like a special edition where I maybe break down another additional component of the funnel. But back to what we were talking about in the beginning, like those are kind of the fundamental pieces of any email funnel, and that's why I always focus on those.
What's been one of your favorite breakdowns, or maybe something that's been the most either one of your favorites or most well received by your readership?
I did one, and it's funny because I usually, just to make it more interesting for people, I try to pick creators who are doing very well.
That makes sense, right? Someone who's popular. It's like, this is why this person who's popular is doing well. Like, this is why it's working, right?
Exactly. And because, like I also always try to think of the hook or the title first and then go from there and reverse engineer it. And so obviously it's easier to come up with a, punchy, attention-grabbing hook or headline or subject line if you start with like a big number, whether that's, a big number, like a big email list or a big follower count. But anyway, there is one specific issue where I have a friend from Twitter. He had like probably 20,000 followers at the time. He had just launched a new course and he was doing well. However, after like the initial hype of the launch, he was kind of struggling to make more sales. And that was a very special edition, not only because it wasn't like a huge creator as I usually do, but also instead of just breaking down the fundamentals, I basically break down what I would do if I were working with him and helping him figure out that issue that he was experiencing.
What were some of the recommendations you would have made?
Well, the main one was his funnel, like going back to the different pieces, was he now had his Twitter following and his Twitter profile, which he was using to generate top of funnel traffic. And he now had an offer, which was his bottom of funnel, but he didn't have a bridge. His only bridge was his newsletter. But there is, even though I love newsletters and they're a very important piece of the puzzle, it's hard to generate sales consistently just with a newsletter. And again, we can dive into the specifics of that. But basically, the whole issue was explaining the missing piece of the puzzle, if you will, and then why that missing piece was so important.
Well, there's always so many, I don't want to say paradoxes, but things that seem contradictory. It's like your most popular content is either someone that everyone's heard of, or someone that nobody's heard of. It's like those are the two. It's like, okay, well, it's hard to explain that one. But I mean, that's the fun of it as well. That's what keeps it interesting. You mentioned that you're using a lot of terms, the fundamentals, the basics, the essentials, etc. How did you build your catalog, and what are some things that you think are essential pieces of every funnel? Like, what's truly non-negotiable?
Well, maybe we can go piece by piece. In the newsletter landing page, I would say a good headline, and it's like super cliche and like probably everyone has heard that, and it's probably not interesting, but like the fundamentals are not interesting, right? And so that for the landing page, definitely a headline. For the thank you page, I would say that one's a little bit more tricky because but I would say
it depends on what type of business we're talking about here.
Right.
Yeah.
But I would say okay, I think this is an easy one, but it's also interesting because not a lot of people do it. I would say like find a way to delight those new subscribers in this case. Like something that I like suggesting for new clients or for clients in general is adding some sort of like Loom video or video like welcoming people because very few people do it, and it's a nice ways to, give that reader a surprise, and kind of build a deeper relationship with them. In the welcome email, I would say if you can, give them a quick win. That could
like a bonus or like a bonus or what kind
of bonus.
Yeah.
Like find a way to make it extremely valuable to be part of your newsletter or their email list right away. And I think that
who's someone you think does that? Who's someone that does that really well?
Which, like the welcome email one?
Exactly. You're saying like just immediately gives them that value right away.
Well, I'll kind of I'll reverse the question a little bit. I would say, before giving you a specific example, I would say that it's easier to do that if, instead of having or using a newsletter as the entry point for your email, as you use a lead magnet, and then you have some sort of like nurture sequence with that lead magnet. So something that, or like a specific mechanism that I'm very big on for those specific reasons, is email courses, because you're using a lead magnet to get people into or onto your email list, but you're not just getting them to subscribe and then wait a bunch of days to start getting value from you. You're delivering that value right away, and you're also like dripping it out, making it digestible. So that's one of my favorite mechanisms. But to give you an example, I mean, like the Ship Theory for Theory or the Premium Ghostwriting Academy email courses, I think are great examples of how to like deliver a bunch of value upfront, but also make it digestible with the email course.
What changes when you switch to B2B? I know we had been discussing in advance of the interview some of the things I was going to want to talk about, and B2B was kind of a big area that we do just because we mostly write content in a B2B setting, not exclusively, but it's a really big portion of what we do. What changes when you're going for more of a B2B sale? Because a lot of this creator stuff is like you said, it's someone selling a course or a digital product. A lot of this, like PGA and the programs you work with, are very much focused on like an individual leveling up in their career or helping an individual start a business. But for business selling a service to other businesses, what changes?
Personally, I think it's even easier, because the thing when you're doing B2C and you're selling information, you need to be very careful of not cannibalizing your pay products, because you're selling, I mean, for instance, PGA, we're selling information, but we're also selling coaching and like accountability and other things. And that's why it's also like a more valuable, higher ticket program. But like what a lot of people do is they just sell courses, right? And so that's why also there is this big fear a lot of creators experience of, oh, I don't want to give away all the information for free. When you're selling services and when you have a B2B offer, you might not have that issue, right? And so that's why I say it's easier, because you can just give away all of the information and just sell the implementation. So I would say that's the biggest change in terms of like how to approach the whole strategy. But I don't know, do you have like is there any angles to that question that you were curious about?
Yeah, I would come back to that in a second. I'm just thinking about what, like, my mind's just like still thinking about what you said and how true that is, because how big of an advantage that is for the B2B person, because it's sort of another one of those paradoxes is you want to show someone all the information and make them come to the realization, wow, this is really difficult. I don't want to do this. Right? What versus, especially if the transformation you're selling is something that they know that they need, right? If you're selling a marketing service or you're selling some like other type, like maybe some sort of technology that you build and implement in the business that they just like, as a matter of fact, they need, because a business owner is in their business. It's their job, right? Whereas a B2C, it's oftentimes more of like a hobbyist. It's like, it's a consideration. Like I could do this, I could not do this, but it's like, eventually that business owner is going to have to solve that problem. And so for them to realize one, like, I think about the ladder of beliefs, right? That you have to like install in a person. That's a lot of what you're speaking to with the idea of a bridge. But the fact that what you're doing is difficult and complicated becomes your advantage in the B2B setting.
I agree. And there is, just because you asked me for an example earlier, and this is in a different kind of setting, but like there is this guy, I actually forgot his name, but he's the owner of a very well-known marketing agency in Australia. I think he's potentially the number one marketing agency in Australia. You've probably seen his ads. He has this book that's called Sell Like Crazy.
Okay.
And that was like his whole philosophy of, I'll just share all of my secrets in this book, and then the whole goal of the book, as you said, is to make people realize this is a bunch of work, and for them to not want to do it so they can hire me, And so yeah, I actually think, now that I think about it and it's crystallizing, it's easier in the B2C, the B2B context, just because you're not afraid necessarily of, or in most cases, to give away all of the information.
What are some things, like you mentioned, you've been writing content for a very long time, and then you've also had witness to, sitting in this mentorship seat over thousands of people writing content. what are some things that, you've learned that you were doing really wrong at the outset that now, in terms of, what's like some things what was it like a big source of wasted effort for you, or an area of wasted effort that you observe? Because I think that's a fear a lot of people have, is like, it's difficult, it's time consuming, and I don't want it to all be for nothing. So where are some people genuinely wasting effort versus just need to exercise patience or something else?
Great question. I think before we started recording, I was also telling you that one of my themes for this year is the
mid-wit.
The mid-wit meme, and how can I always avoid being the guy in the middle of the meme.
If someone's never heard the meme, just quickly.
Yeah. What?
If someone's not familiar.
Okay, so it's basically. Do you know how to explain it?
I do, but
okay.
So the idea being, I don't want someone to be lost because they're not familiar with the meme.
Yep.
I was hanging out with someone yesterday, and she's a bit younger, and she's got I felt like the out of place. She's like, yeah, you don't know what this means? She's like, apparently a watermelon in someone's the watermelon emoji means this. How do you not know that? I'm like, there's no way I would have known that, right? So anyway, someone's maybe listening to this and they're not in our same age range. They're like, what the hell is the mid-wit meme? I'm lost.
Yep.
Basically just the idea of like the bell curve.
Yep.
Right, is kind of the standard deviation, and the idea that oftentimes the true genuine master, or like the Jedi, if you will, in a field, like oftentimes the Jedi is part of the meme.
Yep.
Like the Jedi, and then like almost like the caveman, or like the completely naive person has the exact same strategy. And like a classical example would be, people talking about something like, it really comes back to the idea of the people who like sort of know a little bit, really overcomplicating things.
Yes.
And then the true beginner just does the obvious, and the actual expert just does the obvious. So it's like something like a classical transformation, like weight loss, right? Or even like muscle gain, like going to the gym and getting bigger. Like the person, the midwit, if you will, is going to be like, I need this supplement, this supplement, this supplement, 7 workouts per week. I have to do 3 of them upside down. And if I wear socks, then I'm going
to track your macros.
Exactly. Tracking your macros.
Yep.
Well, sort of.
Yeah.
That's up to debate, I suppose. And that's what the fun of the meme is, because then someone's like, that's not midwit, that's anyway. And then the left side of the bell curve, right side of the bell curve, so the beginner and the expert say, you just like lift heavier week over week, right? Just like get stronger. If you're getting stronger, then you're getting stronger, and eat enough. Versus the person in the middle is like, no, you have to, right? So anyway, when marketing, what do we see people do? Like,
yeah, so thank you for explaining it. That's a great explanation. And yeah, I think that the nutshell of that is how do you avoid overcomplicating things, right? And so
what does the middle of the meme look like in marketing, right?
So in specifically creating content
marketing, exactly.
I think ironically, people overthink a lot what they want to say or what they should be posting or creating content about, and like honestly, like I've learned this lesson over and over again. Like, you don't know what people want to hear from you most of the times. You just need to experiment more and like not overthink it that much, and like let the market tell you what they want.
It's like the person on the just do more, right?
Yeah.
Is kind of the
more
answer.
Reps. Just post
more quantity.
Yeah. More volume usually cures most problems.
Yeah. I was on a sales call today, and I hear this objection a lot. That's like, oh, we tried email in the past and it didn't work for us. And it's like, what didn't work about it? Like, did the people not open the emails? And it's like, well, we tried it for like we sent an email, sent another one 3 weeks later, and then another one 3 weeks later. We're like, I didn't make a ton of money. It's like, okay, well, I don't know if I call that trying email. It's like
going to the gym three times and looking like a bodybuilder.
In a 9-week period, exactly. It's like, okay, and I even think about, the classic, you just have to do more. I don't know, like there's just no, so you think, but in terms of coming back to the question here of wasted effort, right? What are some things that are genuinely, because I think doing more, there are some people I feel like I see put a lot out that just aren't seeing success. And why do you think, like, what are some reasons for that potentially? And obviously, like, you don't have the example, like, or you think all of the effort's necessary because then it's just part of the learning curve?
In my opinion, there is no wasted effort. Like, I like to say there's no wasted reps. Like, for instance, like, I just launched a product, right? Like, even if the immediate financial returns of the product is not as great as I might have expected, and not saying it wasn't, like, I'm just as an example.
Well, a lot of that framing is really important at the outset too, just so you don't have that like attachment and.
True.
Yeah.
But even if like that's not the case, and the financial outcome isn't as great, like I still continue to sharpen my skills. You know, I put a rep in, I learn from it, and as long as I'm learning from it, in my opinion, it's like, no, waste it. You know, but it's going back to what you were saying of sometimes some of these ideas are kind of counterintuitive. Overthinking though it feels like you're not moving, but it's actually like it's consuming a lot of energy. You know, so when you're overthinking things instead of trying things and doing things, you're actually consuming energy and paradoxically not moving.
Okay, there we go. Now that's the waste of effort.
Yep.
Exactly. Okay, we got there. No, I love that framing of one, how you're speaking to your own product launch and not being too, I don't want to say judgmental, but like too attached to the outcome and the results, because, you know, a saying I like is it's too early to tell, right? It's too early to tell if this was useful or not, because you have the rest of your time in the game to generate a return from this. So say for like all of the curriculum that you made in this program, right? Maybe the only problem was you didn't package it the right way. But then you find something, or like you mentioned earlier, maybe something's incomplete, right? So maybe, you know, the product specifically you're selling is all about subject lines right now, subject line mastery. And maybe that's just not by itself valuable to someone, but then you have the 0 to, you know, full newsletter funnel, and now your module is already built and flawless, and like then people are going to open that and be like, oh, the best part of the program was this thing, and you're like, what's funny, because I'd already made that years ago, right? And then, well, I don't want to make the same point twice, I suppose, but also all the content that's in there, if maybe it wasn't, you know, you weren't able to sell it, it's still just the raw material for like, I don't know how many hundreds of tweets and LinkedIn posts just of like taking the lessons and repurposing them standalone into something else. And I think a lot of content creation activities, even if like no one interacted with your ideas when you had 100 followers or when you had 25 people on the list, just send the same article again once you 2 years from now, 6 months from now, figure out how to get people on the list, and then share your good ideas and refine them with some other things that you've learned. So you've also just built, the utility doesn't have to come on day one. The return doesn't have to come on day one for it to have been useful.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Cole, one of the founders of PGA and Ship Theory for Theory, has this idea that I really love and have taken to heart, which is this idea of building your library of content, and that the reward isn't necessarily the engagement that you're getting right away, as you're saying, on your content. It's more so the compounding of this library that grows and grows and that you can use in a bunch of different ways, right? And so, for example, he just started recently pumping out YouTube videos. There's
been some bangers on there.
Yeah.
There's been some good ones.
Bangers. And he's doing like 3 or 4 a week, like big volume, especially for someone who's relatively new to that part of the game. But what a lot of people don't realize is one of the big reasons why he's able to put out so much volume is because he's actually just turning his best written content into YouTube videos. Right, and again, the library. He's been building a library for over 10 years of content since he started writing online, and now he has all of this raw material that he can use in different ways, right? And so I think that's definitely an unlock for once you understand it. It's a big unlock in the B2B space, just because this is top of mind. One of the most.
I'm not gonna get mad at you for talking about B2B again. Yeah.
One of the most underrated use cases, I think, is to use content as a way, like basically use it as material for your sales team. So say you have a B2B business, you're posting on LinkedIn every day. You're not getting a lot of engagement, but who cares? You can share, like you can give these pieces of content to your sales team and they can use it for their follow-ups. They can use it for, I don't know, like their call outreach, but it's way more powerful when you get a cold DM from someone saying, hey, my founder just created this piece of content. I thought you would find it helpful, instead of the classic generic, you know, just bumping this, you know.
Exactly.
Wanted to make sure you saw it.
Yeah, that's another line I use all the time in terms of my own persuasion of like why what we do is valuable, because you don't want to be the guy who's just bumping, like that's all I got, just bumping this. That's all I got. Like, no, it's like there's something useful to share. And I mean, one, in general, like to be, you know, genuinely as helpful as possible here, you don't need to wait to publish your own content to like find someone else's content that's interesting and valuable. I've had 2 vendors actually that I recently hired for my business who used that same strategy, but it wasn't their content. It's just other content that they found. But the credibility is, 3 times stronger
Yep.
when it's, by the way, I also created this piece of content before that really speaks to your situation. Because then you say, this person understands my problem better than I do, which means they're going to understand the solution better than I do. And so again, same thing. You spent all this time building, writing newsletters and creating these sections of it that nobody engaged with for whatever reason on a failed launch, if you will. And then suddenly you repurpose it into something else and you've done 95% of the work and it just changes the game.
100%.
So.
100%. One thing that came to mind as you were sharing that is that's exactly what I've been doing in a way with my funnel breakdowns. Like, I thought, even if no one reads this, if I wanted to, I could send this breakdown to the person I'm featuring or the person that I'm auditing. And that would be like 100 times better piece of cold outreach than me just saying, hey, you want to buy my services?
Exactly.
Because I'm like, I took the time to go through every single piece of your funnel. I analyzed it. Here's what you're doing well. Here are the missed opportunities. If you want my help, happy to help. And the upside though, when you put it online, like you're not only generating like direct business opportunities, but you're also capturing attention and growing your business in other ways.
Absolutely. Yeah. One thing we had. This is sort of speaking to the previous point, and I love that. It's a great way to get someone's attention. Like if there's I would almost start encouraging my own clients or my own customers I would just almost like pitch this to my writers to pitch to the clients exactly that idea. So we do a lot of writing for other agencies for their own lead generation. And if they have, if they're doing more like account-based marketing where they actually they don't just want to, help any direct-to-consumer brand, they actually have a short list of 30. Have us write an issue of your newsletter that's the 10 ways we would boost sales for this brand.
Yep.
And then we send that to that brand. And it's we wrote this breakdown of how we'd help you. We put it in the newsletter. Let us know if you want to chat. You're going to call with someone from that team. So that's a brilliant idea.
Yeah. And even if you don't, you're still producing content.
Otherwise, it's just a great piece of content.
Yeah. Exactly. And other team or other business or other company in the same space could look at and be like, oh, if they can help them, they might help me too, or they might be able to help me too, and you're generating business indirectly.
Yeah, this is something I've said, I don't even know, on a number of podcasts now, and this is an idea I credit to Dickie and Cole, is that, the way to overcome imposter syndrome is to just say real things. Right, so what's a prompt that's always genuine is what is advice you wish your former self knew. Yep. You can't be disingenuous. Yes, I really genuinely wish that 1 year ago I knew this. Yep. Same thing though, as a business, you could say we're the best in the world, but then in your heart of hearts, you're we're not the best in the world. I don't feel good publishing this. Then people read it and they don't believe you. That's no one's winning.
Yep.
Versus you say, here's the 10 things I would do to help this brand or what you do exactly, right? This is the 10 ways this creator should improve their funnel.
Yep.
Someone reads that and goes, oh, wow. He is the real deal.
Yep.
I did a podcast I published a few days ago. This guy, Andrew Pierno, I don't know if you follow him on Twitter, and he buys SaaS businesses and then grows them. And his newsletter is just talking about deal notes. Just here's my due diligence I did on this company. And then also a retrospective, here's where this went right, here's where this went wrong. It's okay, now I actually see this guy's workflow. I want to work with him because that's a better job of due diligence than I would have done on that company. So I want him to invest my money instead of me investing my money.
Back to the theme of give away all the information, sell the implementation. And what you're doing is exactly right. What you want to do is use your content as a way to share with people at scale, what's your process, what's your rationale for making decisions, how do you work with other people, how do you help those people, and it's not as complicated as you think. That's why I also think, going back to the midwit theme, overthinking is usually the highest waste of effort.
Yeah. I have a few additional thoughts here. One, this has been in my mind for 25 minutes. The phrase you used earlier describing your newsletter as your content engine. I think that anchor for people to create the pulse is so critical, because I think where a lot of people get lost is everyone just needs structure, right? I forget the quote, but everyone's silently begging for leadership and everyone's silently begging for structure is what I would add to the quote. And so when you commit to something really simple, the only reason I've produced a large volume of content in the past 5 years is because I've pretty much done an interview a week for 5 years. And then all of my other content is just maybe there's a few things I wrote down here that are interesting to me that I'm just going to fire off as tweets. Right? I didn't like plan to do that. All I plan to do today, all in my head that I committed to in my head is like, I'm just going to show up and do an interview a week. But then I get inspired by things you say to like go and make content from. And so now I'm producing a lot more. Then I'm going to maybe re-listen to this, and then my editor's going to make clips from it. And so all I'm doing is just one really approachable thing to like seed the engine or like crank the engine, and then all of the other things that come from it. So exactly, like maybe all you've committed to doing is putting out this weekly funnel breakdown, but then you can't help yourself, but like say more about it because you just spent all this time doing this research and making one deliverable. Like if all you're making is one deliverable, you're really falling short. One quick example I have about this, we have a client that we do like a weekly recap of an industry as the newsletter. So like very classical newsletter structure, like 12 pieces of relevant news, some of them more quick bullets, some of them more in-depth. And then all of a sudden I check back on their YouTube channel a few months later and someone on their team is making a really high production video every week of like them just reading the news from the newsletter.
Smart.
And it's like, I didn't sell that to them.
Yeah.
Like good for them. Like I'm happy that they're finding more value than I originally intended to provide. Because now I didn't realize it, but like by me writing a newsletter for them, I'm scripting a long form, high production video every week too.
Yeah. The more you write, the more you write. We like to say internally, or the more you create because of what you're saying.
Yep.
Another thing that came to mind as you were sharing that, actually, I did intentionally, because I think the theme there that you're kind of hinting at is constraints. So when I decided to start my newsletter, I very intentionally chose a series of constraints that would allow me to, as you were saying, show up every week after week, and to consistently put out that deliverable. And so my constraints were, every week I'm gonna find a creator who meets this criteria, right? Obviously they have to have a email funnel if I want to analyze or audit their email funnel. I'm going to look at all these different pieces. And then I even created like a newsletter template where I went like, in each piece of the funnel that I audit or review, these are this is the structure that I'm going to follow, right? Like, so my like most of my sections of my newsletters are like very repeatable. Like if you see them, like they're very cohesive, right? Like, so it's piece number 1, the landing page. And then I go, things they're doing well. And then next mini section, things they could improve. Then we move on to the next piece, the thank you page. Here's what they're doing well, bulleted list. Here's what they could improve, bulleted list. And so I don't have to think over and over again about what I'm going to say. I just have to sit at my computer, find a funnel to audit it, and then I just fill in my template with the information or the things that I'm noticing, and that's it. Yeah. And I have a very repeatable format that I can stick to.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest issue for so many people is the blank page. And it's like, well, if in your head, like, I mean, anything, right? I'm going to go to the gym. What does that mean? Like, what do you actually, you're going to get there and you're going to be like, well, what do I do?
Yep.
I'm going to write a newsletter. Okay, well, I get here, you get yourself to show up and like, what do I do? Yep. And that's why so many people are more successful doing CrossFit or a class, because you show up and then there's like a plan for you and you just like put in the effort. So for you, it's like, okay, literally all I need to do is show up, pick a funnel, follow the instructions. I've created a workflow for myself. All right, last couple questions here. And I've said this, a number of times now, but, I very much do admire Dickie and Cole. They're people who I interviewed very early in my podcast. Like both of them were in the first 50 episodes, I believe. And you've worked really, like I feel like I've learned so much from them with it, like very, very minimally actually interacting with either of them directly, mostly just from consuming their content. You've worked really closely with them for 4 years. What are some other really impactful things, whether it's life lessons, business lessons, content marketing lessons that come to mind from like working with those guys?
It's funny because I think the biggest ones are kind of our company values. So I've really absorbed them and like I apply them to everything I do now, and they're extreme ownership. So no matter what you're doing, like whether it's business, whether it's life, whether it's your relationships, I always try to operate on an extreme ownership basis, and with an extreme ownership mindset. The second one is high energy and like relentless tempo. We pride ourselves on doing things quickly. There is a famous, well, not famous, but like a popular Alex Hormozy tweet that I really like, where I'm going to butcher it, but essentially the idea is most people or most team teams default to end of week, but if you default to end of day instead of end of week, you're moving 7 times faster than most people.
That's brilliant. Yeah, I've never heard that one.
Well, in my case, I like to push it to the extreme, and instead of end of day, I like to push it to why not end of hour.
Yeah.
You know, and so if I can, and sometimes I'm like in the middle of a deep work session and something comes to my attention, if I can close, like I already context switched, right?
Yep.
So why not close the loop right away? So just do it quickly, and that, you know, that applies again to everything. If I already context switch, and I have like this open window here in front of me, like let's just take care of it right now and not wait, because there is a compounding to that open loop when you leave it open kind of on the back of your mind. Those two I really like. The last value, we have 3 values. The last one is championship energy. And so we really strive to like be the best and like be our best versions, whether that's, again, business, life, fitness, whatever it is. And a lot of that is just mastering the fundamentals. So we've come full circle. But if you go and study Michael Jordan, like his whole thing was master the fundamentals, and he would practice the fundamentals over and over again. And so that's, I think, one of the other themes and lessons that I've learned working with them for the past few years.
That's awesome. That's an awesome place to wrap up. You know, it's funny you made this point earlier that you have created this online brand of the funnel breakdowns and all this copy and strategy and marketing stuff. Then inside the community, as part of your other, you know, one of your other roles, you're the automation guy.
Yep.
And I'm like, damn, we didn't even touch automations today. So that's just like a thought, because as I'm hearing this, like something you said made me think of like automations and like all of that, and I was like, we didn't even touch that whole side of it. So anyway, we barely scratched the surface today. Time flew by. You're active online, as we've discussed, Tribe of Mentors. It's not the website, it's the Twitter, right?
Yes.
That's the new homepage for, you know, people auditing a person. Obviously, your LinkedIn's also super active as well. But yeah, where should people be checking you out? What information should they be if they're like, I like what this guy has to say? And clearly, Lewis talked too much to prevent all the value from coming out of Daniel today.
No, dude, I appreciate you having me. But yeah, I'm actually most active on LinkedIn right now, just because like I built a little bit of a small following on Twitter on a completely different topic, and like my stuff wasn't really getting a lot of engagement there, so I decided to start from scratch on LinkedIn. I've been writing there for the past 2 months every day. But yeah, Daniel Bustamante on LinkedIn, that's where you can find me. From there, you can kind of go into the rabbit hole and like read the funnel breakdowns, check out my new product, but that's probably the best place.
All right, well, it's been a blast. Thanks so much, dude.
Thank you, my man. Appreciate it.